Patriarchy is dead. Patriarchy remains dead, and we have killed it. Does this play on words sound familiar to you? God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. This statement is perhaps the most famous statement made by German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. This profound proclamation holds far greater significance in its meaning than simply accrediting the rise of atheism and modernism. What did Nietzsche mean? And what am I insinuating with this play on words? Is the patriarchy dead? And if so, who rules the West, if only for now? Hey, welcome back to my channel. I hope you are all well. I'm Christine Grace, and welcome back to my series Debunking the Lunacy. For today's madness, the beloved feminist phrase, we live in a patriarchy. Patriarchy is defined in the Oxford Dictionary as a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. It is evident to me women are not largely excluded in any system of society, let alone government. When the definition of excluded is to deny someone access to a place, group, or privilege, women certainly are not denied access to government or any place of work in society. Otherwise, we would not have female MPs holding 35% of the seats in the House of Commons in Parliament. We would not have seen British Prime Ministers, and in fact, many companies have quotas where they are required to hire a certain number of women. Women are not excluded in today's society. As a matter of fact, your gender and your sex are protected characteristics by British law under the Equality Act 2010. This is to ensure that you are not subjected to discrimination. It would be against the law for any government or any job to exclude you for simply being a woman. And any woman who claims that we do live in a patriarchy should provide anecdotal proof and take it to the courts. Because if it is in fact true that you are being discriminated against purely on the basis of being a woman, then you should be taking legal action. Although I highly doubt that there are many cases of this in 2023, despite feminist claims. Therefore, it is actually impossible for there to be the existence of a patriarchy in Britain today when the definition of patriarchy depends on the exclusion of women, which is illegal. So that's the facts of it. But of course, when dealing with feminists, definitions tend to lose all meaning. Feminist scholarship says that patriarchy has been broadly understood as the system in which men as a group are constructed as superior to women as a group, and as such have authority over them. The modern age. We may as well burn our dictionaries now, right? Seeing as no one wants to bloody use one. This interpretation of the patriarchy, again, to me is not only incorrect, but delusional insofar as what I can see in my own observation. It's completely the opposite. Who rules the roost for most modern day households? Women. Who accounts for 85% of all consumer purchases? Who is more incentivized and benefits from divorce? Who is awarded custody of children 90% of the time, despite evidence providing that children are better off when raised under the predominant care of fathers? Who gets the legal right to decide the murder of an unborn child? Women have all these women available to them, all with different values that they can look up to, but men are only allowed to look up to other men with values that are deemed acceptable by women. Because if women don't deem their values acceptable, the men who look up to these other men will be called misogynistic. But men aren't allowed to call women misandrous for some of the role models who they look up to, who literally display the narratives of men are trash. Men are demonized in today's society for saying literally anything, whilst women are praised for it. Women can have so many standards for men, whilst men literally cannot have any preference on the kind of woman that they want to be with without being called fatphobic or being told, you're slut shaming, or just that their preference is entirely unacceptable. I've covered in another episode the double standards in popular music, how men are spoken about. Well, you could argue, but hey, rappers refer to women as nothing but sluts all the time. My argument would be, well, I thought there was nothing wrong with being a slut. And if there is, why are you acting like one? I'm sorry, bit harsh. I'm not sorry. Harsh, but true. Modern day feminism is just women creating problems that aren't there, screaming inequalities that don't exist. Or at least the patterns that they are suggesting are inequalities are just facts of nature. And you can't change nature. Most of them don't even have a valid prescription for the issues that they create. Sorry to break it to you ladies, sometimes you just have to accept reality for what it is. Try it. You might be a lot happier. One of the prescriptions that I do hear thrown around by feminists is, well, why don't we try a matriarchy as opposed to the patriarchy? We've never been given the chance. Matriarchy is defined as a system or society ruled by a woman or women. So the first thing that comes to mind is, well, would a matriarchy even make the feminists happy? The term matriarchy comes from the Latin word mater, meaning mother, and archine, meaning to rule. In a matriarchal society, women are typically the heads of households and are responsible for decision making, while men have more limited roles and responsibilities. Matriarchal societies are often characterized by a focus on nurturing and communal living, which is derived from typically feminine gender roles. Of course, this whole premise is on the basis of women being mothers, which to me doesn't fit the bill of what feminists want. They want to be seen on entirely the same level as men. They typically view the ability to give life as some kind of oppression. Lots of feminists today say, well, we don't want to be mothers. The term gynarchy is one that I have been introduced to that I have seen used by extreme liberal feminists. Gynarchy is defined as rule by woman or women. This has no connotation of motherhood, whilst it does hold the connotation of female genitalia, so only biological women would qualify. Another reason why this wouldn't even suffice for the feminists, because it's not gender inclusive. Let me not get into that tangent. The term is derived from the Greek words gyne, meaning woman, and archein, meaning to rule. In gynarchy, women are the leaders and decision makers, and men are generally subservient and expected to follow their lead. Again, I would argue that this is already the case because women have become very authoritarian toward men in society. Entitlement is the problem. It's the belief that one is inherently deserving of privileges or special treatment. What unsettles me with feminist ideology is the lack of regard for the truth, natural hierarchies. And in fact, with reference to the quote made at the start of this video, what it seems that Nietzsche means by God, I don't necessarily think he's talking about God in the religious sense. I think he means God in relation to the universal, transcendental truth that lies in the world. So truth is dead. Truth remains dead, and we have killed it. Women leading isn't natural. Even on a personal level, it doesn't feel right. The main premise for the argument of a female-led society rather than a male-led society is the issue of violence. But violence is not a gendered issue. It's a human issue. And if you think otherwise, you're ignorant to your humanity. Just because men and women on an individual level typically display aggression differently, it doesn't take away from the fact that all humans have the capability to incite violence. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who, yes, I babble on about all the time, but it's because he's had such a profound influence on my life, taught me that there is great truth that can be derived from mythology. And once I observed it for myself, I agree this is the case. He correctly points out that in mythology, order, therefore society, the world of matter and form, is usually represented as symbolically masculine, and chaos, therefore the reality of nature, the world of the spiritual and the formless, is symbolically feminine. This can all be read in his books, 12 Rules for Life and 12 More Rules for Life, or if you watch his Harvard lectures from 1996 that are based upon his book Maps of Meaning, which go into great length and detail as to why this is the case. I highly recommend that you go watch those lectures on Maps of Meaning because they really are amazing. As I mentioned in my last episode, this idea of masculinity reflecting order and femininity reflecting chaos is seen in the terms Apollonian versus Dionysian. These terms were actually used by Nietzsche in his work The Birth of Tragedy from 1872. They were used to denote two opposing tensions in art. The Apollonian element reflects lucidity, tranquility, and intellectual detachment. The Dionysian element expresses the primeval, passionate, even frenzied qualities of human nature. The terms Apollonian and Dionysian are philosophical and literary concepts represented by a duality between the figures of Apollo and Dionysus from Greek mythology. Apollo, son of Leto, is the god of sun, art, music, poetry, plague and disease, of rational thinking and order, and appeals to logic, prudence and purity, and stands for reason. Dionysus, son of Semele, is the god of wine, dance, pleasure, irrationality and chaos, representing passion, emotions, instincts. This is why I think men should lead. They're typically more rational, less emotional. Masculinity rules the world of form and objects. I don't think that makes us as women in any way inferior. I think it's utilizing the qualities of the masculine and the feminine in perfect harmony. A recent study I came across, shout out to Alexander Grace, titled The Function of Casual Sex Action and Inaction Regret, a longitudinal study. It presents an issue in modern day women which I believe should lead us to ask broader questions. The study ultimately shows the differences in men and women in how we respond to the biological emotion of regret. Basically, how well do the sexes respond to the emotion of regret insofar as changing their behaviour? Participants were instructed to report their level of regret relating to casual sexual incidences and occasions that they passed up having casual sex. The hypotheses were based off of evolutionary psychology, typically found in the sexual strategies theory, which acknowledges the fact that there are different consequences when it comes to sex for men and women. It shows that women typically display action regret, meaning women typically regret taking up offers of casual sex, whilst men typically have inaction regret, which means that men tend to regret not taking up offers of casual sex. So we would think, as women, if we feel intense regret after a casual sex experience, then we should learn from that emotion and make better intelligent choices in the future so to avoid having to feel the emotion of regret again. The predictions set by the researchers believed that this was the case, that as women we're intelligent enough to know not to make the same mistake twice. The results actually found that consequently action regret did not predict a change in sexual behaviour in women. The findings also provide that action regret had no effect on the amount of short-term sexual partners in women even after the initial emotion of regret was felt. Look, if you're a woman, please do go and check out this study, or watch the video from Alexander Grace. He breaks it down in great detail. It's easy to digest, but you have to be able to understand what this is indicating without getting triggered and somehow finding a way to blame men. This is important for us as women, and there's a lot to be learned from it. Essentially, it shows us that as women, we're not behaving as we should, in the sense that as human beings, not even just as women, regret should indicate that we need to change our behaviour, and we're not doing that. So if we're not changing our behaviour, we're ignoring the biological significance of the emotion of regret. As Alexander Grace correctly points out, these findings had researchers stumped because if the function of the emotion of regret is not to inspire a change in behaviour, then why do we have the feeling in the first place? The function of regret seems to be working perfectly fine in men, so why is it not working in women? This study should prompt us as women to want to understand why our evolutionary psychology is not functioning as it should. What's changed in us that we no longer have the ability to learn from feelings of regret? We need to figure this out because this study makes us look really bad, and it's showing that we have a problem, but do with that information as you wish. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up and share with a friend, and be sure to subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with all my videos. If as women we can't even learn from our mistakes, who are we to try and tell men how to live? I think the evidence in this study speaks for itself and speaks to the lunacy of the world that we currently live in. But why don't you let me know what you think? This is just my interpretation, and of course, we all have our own. Let me know yours in the comments below, and as always, let's remain harmonious in the adversity of opinion. Have a great week.